Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to Global Ventures here on Planet Coaster. On the screen right there is the little element that I was talking about for the end of Bandito in the last episode, but I didn't like it. I felt like it was too RMC inspired for my liking, and because the park is going to have an RMC coaster in the not too distant future, it made more sense to actually scrap that element and start again. Plus, there was a little issue with the pacing. It wasn't holding up on the block breaks or anything, but I just felt like I could have done a little bit better. So, I turned my attention to Dollywood, which is something that you don't hear very often. But Dollywood is a very good theme park, actually. I'll give them a huge amount of credit, because I think at the start, not many people took them seriously. But, you know, over the years, they've built up a very, very good reputation for being a very solid theme park. Them and Silver Dollar City, because they're owned by the same company. But Mystery Mine at Dollywood is a Gerstlauer Eurofighter model. I'm not quite 100% sure what the theme of the mine is. I think it's haunted, but then there's a bit with thunderstorms and dead canaries in cages and stuff like that. So I guess it's a little bit of everything. The mine is just not a nice place to be. But the finale of that ride, you drop down from the main mineshaft tower, and then you go into a heartline roll on an incline, and then you go into another half heartline roll, which then leads into a dive loop. And I really like that element. It stands out very, very proud from the building that the rest of the ride takes place in. It's a very good focal point. It looks great in photographs and videos. And I really like the way that, even though it's a roller coaster and it's a roller coaster track, and it's very obviously a roller coaster track, there's something about the way they've designed that double element that it almost looks like it belongs to that building. It looks like mining equipment, basically, and they did a really good job of making that fit in. So I like that element, and I've taken inspiration from that element, and you can see on the screen right now I'm building a very similar looking element. I wouldn't say it's identical. There are a lot of differences. First and foremost, this is an Infinity coaster, not a Eurofighter coaster, so the radii of the Heartline rolls are a little bit looser, so that 4 cars can navigate it rather than the usual 2. But I like the way that I've made this element jut out a little bit from the rest of the land. So when you walk into Legend of the Frontier, the first thing you'll see, this area here will be tree lined. It won't be quite as arid as the rest of the area, so it'd be more, not pine trees, but something a little bit more Western inspired, but you know, not desert, basically. And I'll have to look at things like Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2 to see what kind of trees are actually used in those sorts of areas, just to get a little bit of inspiration from that. But you'll be walking down this kind of tree-lined avenue, and then suddenly on the right-hand side there'll be a bit of a rocky area jutting out, and then this huge element sticking out as well. And I think it would be a nice way to entice people in real life, at least, to actually go and ride the ride. You know, the earlier you see it, this is one of the only sections of the ride that you can truly see from the main path in the park. Manic Miner and Bandito are relatively well hidden for the most part. There's a few areas with Bandito, so the first element obviously dies under and over the pathway on that side. Plus the lead out from that first element also goes under the pathway. Plus when it goes through the clock tower into the overbank turn, there's a little bit there where it crosses over the path a couple of times. But besides that, there isn't much where you can see it from the main path. A lot of it, really, you can only see from Manic Miner or on this ride itself. So having this one little focal point is a really good way to get people intrigued in your ride. I don't think, well, actually I pretty much know that the game doesn't have that kind of mechanic built into it, but I know the original Roller Coaster Tycoon did. It had something like that, where if you were building a new ride, people would stand and watch and say, I can't wait to ride, and then the name of the whatever ride it was you were building, which I thought was a really neat touch. But I think, again, engine limitations meant they couldn't quite implement it into Planet Coaster. Who knows, though, one day they might be able to. I wouldn't say it's particularly high on the priorities list. But yeah, overall, as always, I'm pretty happy with this element. I always say that, and then I always go and change it. This is the one, though, where I think actually this is probably what I was leading towards all the time and just hadn't noticed it yet. I'm caring less about the pathway as well, because I can just build the pathway a little bit elevated over that section and then just put some rocks underneath to make it look a little bit nicer. There is a nice little avenue there, and in fact the heavily overbanked turn just after this element, before it dives down under the pathway again, I really wanted to make that the new pathway into the area, or have it as another new connection into the area, because I really like the way the train traverses that section of track. I think it looks really, really good. Again, there's a little bit of a pacing issue at the end here. The train doesn't quite carry enough momentum into this final brake run. The way I've solved that is to shorten the trim brake and replace it with just normal track. And to the most part, it works. It doesn't hold it up too much, which is good, because it is the end of the ride. It's not supposed to be travelling at 100 miles an hour into the brakes, but it was coming in a little bit too slow. I think 15 miles an hour it was coming in at, which sounds fast, but on a coaster like this, it is a little bit too sluggish. So I did some little tweaks here and there. The block brake that goes into the I'm trying to think of a name for it. The Heartline Dive, I think I might call it. The block brake that leads into that, I increased the speed there so it doesn't slow down the car too much. I think I might make it a little bit taller at some point as well, but at that point you're kind of cramming the track in, because you have to build it as an almost vertical drop then to actually make it line up with the rest of the track. So I think I've tweaked it as much as I can now, and it's just a case of putting up with it. And that pretty much ends the rebuild of Bandito. I am still toying with the idea of redoing the first section of the ride, mainly because I was digging out the mineshaft tunnel, so from the clock tower to the Immelman. I was digging all that out again, and I realised that where the ride drops down into the basement at the bank and then goes around into the Heartline roll there, there isn't much clearance between that and the mineshaft tunnel underneath it. So I think I might move it to the other side of the station, if that makes sense. So that currently, when you go through the launch, you go up, down, but you pass through a hill, and it creates that sense of darkness. And I think I might do that for the intro as well, and have it be built under that same hill, just to get the darkness factor, because that Heartline roll should come as a surprise to riders. But currently, because it's basically broad daylight inside that building, because I've not been able to put the land over it, it's a little too bright still, so you kind of see the inversion coming before it arrives, if that makes sense. So I want to change that, but I'm not going to do that on camera. If I do change it, I'll do it off camera, or I'll find another way to make it a little bit darker inside. I'm really not a fan of just putting the game into night mode and recording a POV that way, because that to me does not feel natural. Especially in the UK, which is, this park is supposed to be based in the UK. There are no theme parks in the UK, particularly in the summer, that are open beyond 7 PM. As you get towards Halloween, Thorpe Park, Alton Towers, I don't think Chessington do it because they're more family friendly. But I know Legoland stay open late for fireworks, and Alton Towers and Thorpe Park stay open for Halloween Horror Nights, or whatever they're called these days. But beyond that, like 6-7 days a year, I think that happens. The norm is parks in the UK close between sort of 4 and 6 PM, so it never gets to darkness. So it's incredibly unrealistic. Now I know in America it's a lot different. Disney World, Disneyland, I think Universal as well, stay open well into the early hours some nights. So I'm not going to say that it's not realistic completely, because it depends in which part of the world you're from. But here in the UK, it is unrealistic to record a POV at night, because no one will go on the ride at night. So why would you record a POV at night? Also the fact that I want it to be dark indoors, and I know that there's the sequence, I can't actually remember what it's called now, where you can get it to change between day and night depending on whether the ride car is inside or outside. I just don't think that's realistic either. Even though it does kind of eradicate the problem that I'm talking about, it just doesn't feel right for me. I don't like that idea of manipulating the environment in order to suit what I want it to do. I'd much rather just build something that's dark, and if I have to cover it in terrain in order to make it dark, I'll do that, because I'd rather do that and have it sort of be realistic than try and bodge it and have it be unrealistic. This is a very quick POV I'm just doing here. I think this is before I dig out the tunnel, actually, so you will see a little bit of clipping here. Don't panic, There's another POV at the end of the video that will be in normal speed. I don't actually know if the frame rate issues are just me on my preview or whether they're in the video as well. They're probably not in the video, I hope. There's the roll. I'm quite happy with the fact that when I hand built that, I got it pretty much spot on with smoothness, and hitting the smooth button actually made it more janky. So I'm quite happy with that. What was I saying? Oh yeah, there'll be another POV at the end of the video with the tunnel dug out as well, and hopefully with no clipping, because I have gone through most of the tunnel. I think I've gone through all of the tunnel thinking about it. I haven't removed those big spotlights that I put in yet, but what I have done is made the tunnel itself a little bit wider, so that the car can fit through a lot more easily. And I've also changed the way that those A-frames have been built, so they're a little bit taller, they're a little bit wider, and depending on which way the track is banked underneath it, one leg sticks out a little bit further than the other. So there should be plenty of room for these cars to whip through, because they go through at almost 70 miles an hour. So you definitely need a lot of clearance, because if anything fouls the track when something goes through at that speed, you're going to have a huge incident on your hands. So again, in the realms of realism, I'm going to make sure that there's enough clearance there for the car to actually go through. One thing I did notice when I was doing this section of the ride was the first left-hander at the bottom of the main drop. That one looked fine, but the right-hander, so the one here, it kind of looked like it wasn't banked enough, and there was quite a lot of lateral forces. But I have gone through and hit the smooth button again since then, and I don't think it changed it. So I guess it's just a relatively wide turn, so the banking doesn't need to be as extreme. Plus, a little bit of lateral forces doesn't hurt. It kind of gives you that feeling of you're on an old minecart track, and you're being thrown around a little bit as you're going around. And it's, you got to be careful when you're building two rides next to each other that are quite similar in this section. So Manic Miner is supposed to be the wild mine ride. This is supposed to be the Great Escape, but to fit the story of the ride a little bit more, connecting to some old minecart track and trying to escape through the tunnels, it's not very similar to Manic Miner's story, so it kind of works, it kind of fits. Here's me just fiddling around with these A-frames, trying to make them fit the tunnel a little bit better. I think in a second I do actually lift it up. All the flooring here as well, I think I'm going to change. So instead of having wooden flooring, I think I might just replace it with flat rock. I did go on the Steam Workshop and download some Big Thunder Mountain inspired rocks from the Theme Maker's Toolkit. So hopefully I'll be able to put those in. I've seen a lot of chat on Reddit at the moment about how to credit creators, and I think I'm going to have to go through the Steam Workshop again and find a list of all the creators that have made assets that I'm thinking of using, and then just put a big list in the description of all the assets. I think that's the best way to credit them, because at the end of the day, these people have put a lot of hard work into creating these assets, because the Theme Maker's Toolkit, from what I've heard, isn't always the easiest tool to use. I think it's actually a very good idea to have a kind of standardized modding system, because that's one of my problems with City Skylines, is you've got lots of people from all over the world making lots of different mods and lots of different styles, and they're not always compatible. So I do like the way that Frontier have tried to be a little bit more cautious and tried to standardize the modding process. But I have also heard reports of people make assets that are almost identical to other assets, and then the Theme Maker's Toolkit rejects it for whatever reason. So again, I think it's something with a little bit of polish. I think it'll work really, really well. But for the time being, some people have problems. Anyway, point I was going to make was, a lot of people have put a lot of hard work into these assets, so it's only right that they get the credit they deserve. Because some of them, like some of the desks and things that I've been looking at for Tower 16, I think it's called Tower 16, it changes every time. Some of the desk assets I've been looking at for that, in order to help with the story, really, really good, really solid, polished assets, look really nice. And a lot of the road signs that I'm thinking of using for City of the Future, again, look really, really good. The rocks that I was just talking about, the Big Thunder Mountain style rocks, they look awesome on the workshop. So there's a lot of really, really good stuff there. and I think there's like animatronic dinosaurs and stuff like that as well, so it's really impressive. I'm looking forward to actually putting them in the park. It's a really good feeling when I'm on the workshop just looking at what people have made, and I'm getting inspiration myself from seeing what these people have made. I'd love to be able to have a go at it myself, but I don't think my 3D modelling skills are quite up to scratch yet, which is sad because I used to do 3D modelling a lot when I was at uni. You know, I used to design cars and things like that, so I'd like to get into that again. I think that'd be quite good. I have downloaded Blender on the new PC, so we'll see about that. We shall see. But yeah, this is basically, the rest of this video is just me digging out this tunnel now and putting new lamps in. I am quite happy with it though, and again you'll see the POV at the end. It's a full POV from beginning to end in real time, so you'll be able to see all the assets and everything like that. There is sound in it as well, although the bell ringing in the clock tower hasn't been replaced yet, and there's a couple of other sound effects, and also the doors at the start of the ride, especially on the launch. They've not been triggered yet, so you will go through a door that doesn't open. Just bear that in mind when you criticize the ride. But yeah, any other feedback or any other ideas that you have for this ride, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. Comments are re-enabled on the channel, so you'll be able to do that. I'll also post the POV section on Reddit and get some feedback there as well, because I think it's always nice to get feedback from as many different people as possible. Plus, there's so many good creators on Reddit. I'm insanely jealous a lot of the time when I'm seeing how good some of these builds are. And there's a few that perhaps aren't as good, but I won't criticize that, because we all start somewhere basically, and as people get better, the builds get better. So, which is kind of what this park is as well. You know, the first day I bought this game, I started this park. Excuse me. I still have a cough, by the way. Should have mentioned that at the start. Yeah, the first day I bought this game, I started building this park, and you can kind of see, like, the first station that we built on the railway. It's a lot better now than it was because I rebuilt it, and I kind of feel like I should have kept some of those old buildings and just used it as a datum. Like, this is where I was 2 years ago, and this is where I am now. But one of the good things about YouTube is it's on video record now, so you can see how bad I was 3 years ago, and you can see how much I've improved. But the whole entrance area of the park, I'm thinking of giving it an upgrade and making it look a little bit nicer, because for a park of this size, the entrance is quite small. So I think I'm gonna, you know, as I say, boost that a little bit, maybe shift its location slightly. Oh, that's my phone. Shift its location slightly, make it look a little bit nicer, a little bit grander, and give myself a little bit more room to play around with, and see if we can make it look just better in general, really. But this ride, you know, this ride is completely different to how it was even a couple of months ago. Raider the 4 is a massive change as well. I think the only ride that's remained relatively consistent is Crazy Taxi. That's the only one where once I've found the right layout, when I was building it, I did keep going back to the drawing board and changing things, but once I kind of hit confirm and built all the scenery, apart from banking one of the turns a little bit more, I've not changed it. And I think that was the first time in this game where I really hit the mark of this is exactly what I was thinking of when I started designing this. And since then, I've not had many more successes, really. Everything's been rebuilt. But I'm hoping one day I'll come up with an idea again where I'll just build it the first time and go, that's exactly what I was thinking. One of the things I love about this game is you can go off-piste and still end up with something pretty much along the lines of what you were thinking, even if it's not exactly what you were thinking, which is a really cool thing to be able to do as well. This is me just watching the ride go through that final element. I will now say that the idea behind adding 2 inversions at the end instead of 1 was to try and beat the world record for the most number of inversions, and I'm very happy to say I've counted them, and I can't quite see how it came to this number, but according to the ride results, there are 16 inversions on this ride. I've only counted 15, but I think I know what the 16th one is. So it's kind of like Untamed at Wallaby Holland. There's a lot of debate. I think I mentioned this last episode actually. There's a lot of debate about there's a banked turn, or there's a banked element that goes over 135 degrees, which is the official classification of what makes an inversion. Some people say it's not an inversion, some people say it is. I personally think it is. If that's the definition and it's crossed it, then it is. And the last overbank turn before the blocks that lead into the new Heartline dive, I think is what the last inversion is, because I think the banking goes over 135 degrees. Anyway, that's it for me for now. The POV will be starting very, very shortly, so sit back, relax, and enjoy that. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you enjoyed the series. Drop some comments down below with ideas for future episodes, and also offer some feedback on this ride. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support, and until next time, I will see you soon.